Many of those who call themselves awakened these days claim, quote, "I experience God within me," close quote. But they only experience God the Father. And even that is only a muted, pallid experience, because they do not realize that they are inwardly sick and are merely parroting traditional platitudes. Johannes Müller is a clear example of this trend. In any case, those quote-unquote awakened people do not have Christ, for experiencing Christ is not a matter of feeling God in our soul. Rather, we must feel both death in our soul on account of the body and the resurrection of the soul through the Spirit. Anyone can claim to feel God within himself or herself. Even the purely rhetorical theosophists make that claim. However, only when we go beyond that to the two experiences of powerlessness and resurrection from that powerlessness do we come to a true Christ experience. Then we're also on the spiritual path to understanding the mystery of Golgotha. We can then find the forces that stimulate certain spiritual powers and lead us to the mystery of Golgotha. You see, there's no need to worry about finding Christ through our own direct experience, for we have found him when we've found ourselves again after the experience of powerlessness. That is, when we fully experience and overcome that powerlessness. That feeling of powerlessness or nothingness will naturally pass when we honestly and without arrogance think about our own powers and abilities. And this feeling is indispensable and must precede the Christ impulse. Some clever mystics believe that finding the higher I, the God I within their I, makes them true Christians. However, this is a far cry from what Christianity really is. Christianity must be based on this sentence by Silesius, quote, "In vain the cross on Golgotha was raised. Thou hast not any part in its deliverance, unless it be raised up within thy heart," close quote. The details of life confirm that what I'm saying here is true, and we can then move from these details to the all-suffusing feeling of powerlessness and the resurrection from that powerlessness. My dear friends, we would do well to take the first step toward that feeling of our physical body's powerlessness when confronted with divine truth, and we can do so fairly easily by cultivating the following realization. Doubtlessly in the depths of our soul, we're all inclined toward the truth, and consequently toward expressing that truth. Now, precisely at the moment when we're about to speak the truth and reflect on our intention to speak the truth, that is, when we can take that first step toward the experience of powerlessness described above, as we reflect on what we mean by speaking the truth, we come to the strange realization that Schiller already put in words in one of his votive tablets. Quote, "Soon as the soul begins to speak, then can the soul speak no more," close quote. In other words, in the process of being put into words, into language, what we inwardly really experience as truth gets blunted. It is not killed or deadened in the process, but it begins to dull. Moreover, if we've learned anything about language, we know that proper names, words that designate one and only one thing, are the only correct words for the thing each designates. As soon as we use general terms, whether they're nouns, verbs, or adjectives, we're no longer articulating the whole truth. Indeed, truth then means realizing that with each sentence we say, we're essentially and necessarily deviating from the truth. In spiritual science, we try to rise again from this realization that with every one of our statements, we're expressing an untruth by adopting the method I've often described for you. As I've said before, in spiritual science, what matters is not so much what is said, but rather how it is said. After all, what we say would also be subject to the feeling of powerlessness. You can see for yourself what I mean when you trace in my lectures, and even in my writings, how every topic is described from more than one viewpoint, how everything is presented from various angles, because only then can we come close to understanding these topics. If you think that the words themselves are more than a kind of eurythmy, you are very much mistaken. Words are really nothing more than eurythmy carried out by the larynx with the help of the air. They are essentially merely gestures, except that they're not made with hands and feet, but with the larynx instead. Thus, we must realize that in speaking, we are merely gesturing towards something, and to develop the right relationship to truth, we must understand every word as a gesture toward what we want to express. That is, our words are gestures, pointers, or signs, and that is also what eurythmy teaches us. Eurythmy essentially turns the whole person into a larynx, so that we express with our whole body what normally only the larynx expresses. Thus in eurythmy we experience firsthand that even when we speak with sounds, we're really only making gestures. For example, when we say the words father or mother in general, we can only express ourselves truthfully if the other person, our dialogue partner, lives as deeply in the same social element as we do and thus understands our gesture. We rise again from the powerlessness we can feel regarding language. We are resurrected from that powerlessness and overcome it only when we understand that in the moment we open our mouth to speak, we must already be Christian. What has become of words, of the Logos, in the course of history, can be understood only if we reconnect the Logos with Christ. That is, we must realize that as our body becomes the vehicle of speech, it forces the truth downward, and as a result, part of it dies on our lips. We can make it come to life again in Christ when we understand that we must spiritualize it. That is, mentally in our thinking we must include the Spirit rather than taking in only the words as such. This is what we must learn, my dear friends. I hope to be able to say more about this in tomorrow's public talk, but I'm not sure if there will be enough time. In any case, I'd like to speak about this to you today and hope it won't bother you if you hear it again tomorrow. First of all, I'd like to say to you what I've said in many public lectures, that when two people say the same thing, it's not the same at all. We have to wonder what's going on here. What causes this? As we study the matter more closely, what we find is that Hermann Grimm's style shows that every one of Grimm's sentences is the result of a hard, personal, individual struggle. Grimm, a luminary of 19th century culture, wrote about all kinds of things, but everything ultimately grew directly out of his consciousness soul. Wilson's descriptions are brilliant, but as though possessed by something in his own subconscious. Indeed, there are traces of demonic possession here. There is something in his subconscious that inspired him, that fed him what he then wrote down. This demon expresses itself in a special way in an American of the 20th century, speaks through Wilson's soul. That is the great and mighty reality we must become aware of. However, nowadays people are so lazy that when they read something, their response is usually to say that they've read the same thing elsewhere too. In other words, they focus only on the content. But now is the time when we must all learn that the content by itself doesn't matter as much anymore. Instead, what matters is that we understand others based on their words, and we must see those words as nothing more than gestures. Thus we must know who makes the gestures, for they determine what the words mean. Truly, this is something we must get used to, because it is one of the greatest mysteries of even ordinary life, my friends. There's a great difference between sentences that have been struggled for and wrestled with by the personal I, and those that have been given in some way as inspiration from above or below. Of course, we'll find sentences resulting from inspiration to be more suggestive and compelling, because those that have been struggled for require that we also struggle in reading them. The time is coming when we will have to move away from merely looking at the literal, verbatim meaning of what appears before our soul, and instead must consider the person who is saying this or that. That is, we must focus not on the outer physical personality, but rather on the whole human spiritual context. Accordingly, this must be our answer to the question of how to find Christ. For Christ cannot be found by means of any strange wool gathering or through convenient mysticism. We can find Christ only if we have the courage to take our place in the midst of life, and that means that we must also feel the above-mentioned powerlessness in regard to language, powerlessness that our body has brought upon us because it has become the bearer of speech. That experience of powerlessness must be followed by the resurrection of the Spirit in the Word. That's the answer. It's not just a matter of the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life, in quotes, another sentence that has often been misunderstood. Instead, it's already the sound that kills. And for the Spirit to give life again, we must connect our concrete, individual experience to Christ and the mystery of Golgotha. Thus, the first step to finding Christ is this: seek. But not just by looking for the meaning of pretty words here and there. That's all people are used to these days. Instead, we must seek the human context, looking at how the words emerge out of the place they are spoken from. This will become increasingly important in the future. If more of us would consider this, people would urge us so often to read this or that, because the author appears to write completely in line with anthroposophy or theosophy. It doesn't matter so much what words are on the page. What matters is the spirit out of which a person speaks. Anthroposophy is not about spreading words, but about bringing a new spirit. And this is the spirit that, beginning with the 20th century, must be the spirit of Christianity. My dear friends, this is what I wanted to add to what we've talked about a week ago. I am very glad it was possible to do this, and that I could talk to you again about these issues that concern us all. I hope that we will soon be able to continue these talks here in Zurich. On this note, let us always remember, even when we are apart, that as anthroposophists we are always together in our soul. Let us remain united faithfully in this way, in the spirit of humanity that shall prevail.